Tommy, I'm a little bit hungover from the NFL draft listen, I said Ashton Jeanty no matter what, but here's what I can tell you.
Yeah, he's a Raider.
The Chicago Bears are full of offensive weaponry. Now,
well, you got a couple of targets there in the first 2 rounds, I noticed. So that's
some targets.
Good stuff right there. Now, are you suffering from separation anxiety now that the draft is over? I mean, you're having a hard time facing the everyday world.
I thought you were going to bring up separation anxiety, that the Scorpion Karen's on vacation. But yes, I am having separation anxiety from the NFL draft. But I feel good about it. I feel good.
What did you think of the televised version of the draft there? It seemed there was a lot. I mean, there was a lot to digest there. Did you think it was good?
I didn't miss it. I can tell you that. Right? Listen,
what do you think of the host?
I watched Friday and Saturday all the way until the end, and I thought, wow, I'm a loser. And then I was like, no, maybe I'm awesome.
Yeah, you're in the majority. They had a gigantic audience. What do you think of the host? He gets paid $40 million a year. Did a pretty good job, huh? No?
I thought it was fantastic. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. He's got a good gig.
He's got a good gig. I think you could say that. Well, I guess our gig is set to begin right now. I think we got to do some TnZ here today.
Yes.
Podcast time. That music is confirming all that for me as we sit here.
Yes.
You in your place, I in my place, to talk about what has gone down. And Z, there you are. Good. Now I can talk to you. We're gonna do the open tease part. So that's kind of where we talk about what we're going to be talking about for the next a little less than an hour now. And of course, we have to start with the big tournament at Lake Hartwell, the Whataburger Bassmaster Elite at Lake Hartwell.
And actually, I got to tune in to a lot of that event. And really that event, it's almost like, and we'll get into this a lot, but it's almost like after day 2. By the way, I believe you picked Jay Shakurit to win this tournament. Great job. I picked Drew Cook. So I was definitely biased in this event by the final day, as I know you were. But the amazing thing about this tournament, that dude that you're looking at, Paul Marks, you knew we were going to see his name this year, and I'm fairly confident by saying this is not the last time you're going to hear of Paul Marks this season.
Well, we're also going to talk, and you've got this listed, and I'm interested in this because we haven't talked about this before. Someone, I believe it was you, said we're going to talk about sight fishing from the aspect of, does it hurt the lakes where people sight fish, especially? I guess you're talking about in tournament situations, or is it everybody sight fishing?
Well, I've heard this for the last probably 50 years of my life, and there's an amount of people that say they feel that sight fishing hurts the lakes. It hurts the population, it hurts the fishing, and I had somebody say that to me Friday night, and we kind of went back and forth for about an hour, for 4 hours about it. And I thought, wow, that's something that would be good to talk about.
Okay. We'll find out, I guess. Absolutely. But yeah, 30 years ago, sight fishing was the forward-facing sonar. It was a plague of locusts that was going to descend on the world of bass fishing, and still a concern, obviously, I guess, from your report with some other people. What else are we going to talk about here? First flight and last flight, we're going to do that as always. How about that?
We have some moves, and we have a big move actually in first flight. We have a new number 1. We'll get into that. And I got to actually have a conversation with our new number 1 in first flight 40 minutes ago.
Okay.
And we'll dive into the new number 1.
Well, now
sure.
I'm intrigued. I can't wait to see who that is and what their qualifications for number 1 in the first flight is going to be. But we got that and more. We got news, notes, and nuggets. We got the weigh-in, where we weigh in on a couple of topics, and I guess we got a full plate coming up here today.
We do.
So before we get into it, why don't you give us a big helping of Strike King to get things started?
And Tommy, I'm going to give you a story with this Strike King bait right now. A big hats off to Mason Grossbauer. He was our winner of the last podcast. He won the Hyper Mag reel, bunch of Strike King stuff. And I want to give a shout out to young Mason. I believe he's in his mid-20s. He said, I know you're doing a seminar at DNR Sports Center. When I notified him that he had won the prize package, and he said, donate it to a kid, which I thought was very cool.
That's good.
And I did. Actually, it worked out great. It was probably a 12 or 13-year-old kid. He got the whole prize pack and a bunch of Zona gear. But we're going to give away more stuff in this podcast a little bit later on, what the rules will be with that. But Tommy, I want to show you something. Okay.
Right.
This is a Strike King Pinger minnow. Okay.
I've heard that.
That Pinger minnow was brand new last Thursday morning. It would have been the first morning of Hartwell. Okay.
All right.
You got a good view of that right there?
Yes, sir.
So if you look at that Pinger minnow, it's shredded, right? Totally shredded. It was brand new in the morning. It's a little internal weighted swim bait. And we basically got a show shot in 2 hours. 27, 28 pounds of smallmouth in a bay off of one of the Great Lakes. It was absolutely incredible. And after you catch the meat, then we get some of the beautiful stuff, some drone footage. So cameraman Brian Evie is going to put the drone up, and the camera boat's going to go about 500 yards away. And I just get on the trolling motor, and I'm going, and I'm casting, I'm goofing around. Well, I catch about a 4-pounder for the drone, and very shallow water. Again, I was on one of the Great Lakes. And Tommy, I'm not kidding when I say this. I hooked another one for the drone, and I'm fighting it, and it's about a 4 3/4. I didn't weigh it because I spun out with what I witnessed following it. So I don't land this one. I'm just fighting him. And as fishing God as my witness, there was one following him that was the biggest smallmouth I have ever. I've held some pretty big smallmouth. It was exponentially the biggest creature I had ever seen. I thought at first, wow, that's a Great Lakes carp. You see a lot of carp this time of year. And dude, I was only in like 4 feet of water. So I got to put scale to what I had hooked and what was following it. It was the biggest damn thing I have ever laid my eyes on. So I start screaming to Evie. To get the drone. We believe we have it cruising for about 20 seconds. And it wasn't scared. It wasn't spooked at all. And my camera boat driver, you'll remember this name. My camera boat driver's name's Adam Rasmussen. He took second place at the Grand Lake Classic against Justin Hamner.
Yes. Big star of the class.
He comes over. And he said, how big was it? And I said, man, I don't know. And he said, would you say it was a 9-pound smallmouth? And I said, I would say that what you just said was conservative.
Wow.
And I mean that.
Man.
That I can't say this. I might have saw a world record. I was shaking. I was shaking to the point I couldn't even function. Listen, when I get nervous, I can't talk and I get rattled out.
Like a lot of people.
I was spun out until the next. I'm spun out now thinking about it. What was funny was it was about 24 to 25 inches long, but where it was impressive, I'm going to say that it was 20 to 22 inches around.
Oh my gosh. So it had that hubcap sort of profile that we love.
I wanted him to put Pinger minnow in his mouth, but he didn't do that.
He did not do it. Well,
anyway.
I'm intrigued. I want to see the Bigfoot footage that you have there because and you narrowed it down pretty good. One of the Great Lakes. So I got to So I may be able to go out and find it myself. Probably not.
It was a big lake. It was a big lake. Yes. So anyway, there you go.
Right. Good. That's intriguing. All right. News, notes, and nuggets, as we say here. The things, the headlines ripped from the headlines of today. Sunday, or at least last Sunday, and we start with our winner at Lake Hartwell. A great tournament, not what you call, strictly speaking, a big fish tournament, but huge numbers tournament.
Yeah, and that, if you really look at what Paul Marks did, it was really cool to kind of watch, the way the tournament transpired, because you kind of knew that dude. You kind of knew Paul Marks was creeping and creeping and creeping, waiting for a stumble. And I think a couple different things. It was strength versus strength on that last day.
Yeah.
That man, that's what you want as far as diversity. And I remember, I don't know, it was 3/4, through the day where Drew Cook locked up on he basically posted up on a giant and donated so much of his day to catching what he thought was a 7-pounder, which generally speaking, Drew Cook does that. He seals the deal, man. But you knew throughout the week that Paul Marks, and you can even throw Tucker Smith in there, they were going to 16 to 18 pound you to death. Mm-hmm. If you slipped up in this tournament, like we got to see on the last day. And the other thing is, it was funny when I say strength versus strength, when you watch Drew Cook sight fish, when you watch him sight fish, you are watching a master. You are watching somebody that is so powerful at what he does. And I hate to say this, you would watch other anglers up shallow fishing, and it almost, I don't want to say this, it almost looks coordinated compared to watching Drew Cook.
Yeah.
You get the same vibe when you watch a Paul Marks offshore doing exactly what he's doing. And it really comes down to where that dude's from. Talking to Paul Marks, I'll give you a great story. He fishes Lanier pretty much every day, which Lanier is basically a Hartwell on steroids, right, as far as, the size of the spotted bass. But a very cool story that Paul said was he's fished probably a dozen to 15 tournaments on Hartwell. So I said, well, so you weren't a beginner coming here. And he said, no. And a really cool story is my dad and Mark Harden. You know the name Mark Harden?
Oh, yes, very much. From Georgia.
Fisherman.
Yeah, well-known Georgia fisherman.
Great fisherman.
Yeah.
So basically, this young man has cut his teeth fishing with some hammers, on blueback herring lakes, spotted bass lakes. And he goes, dude, I'm not kidding. On day 3, I went and fished a brush pile that we planted in 2019 and caught 2 of his most key fish in this entire tournament on a brush pile that he and Mark Harden planted a half a decade ago.
And it was just basically roulette, him beating Tucker Smith, because both of those guys were just playing that high percentage game and non-stop catching. Yes. Both of them great. And Paul Marks, we should have seen him coming. He had a great open. He finished 6 tournaments out of 9 in the opens in the 12th or better. That was just, he's an unbelievable angler. Quiet, unbelievable.
Very quiet, but very confident. And as much as you've seen his name, the last 24 months, you knew somewhere this year he was going to go Cam Scataboo on the entire field, which he obviously did here at Lake Hartwell. And Tommy, I will say this: I don't have to be unbiased anymore. I wanted Drew Cook to win this tournament. For some reason, it was weird. You said you called him, and this was strange. You called him a veteran, and it feels like just yesterday that we met Drew Cook at a meeting in Birmingham.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. And you fished with him on a little lake, did a little event on a little private lake with him out there being the guide. Yeah.
He's my team partner. Okay. I won that belt with him.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Maybe it made, when you said he was a veteran, I kind of laughed. I'm like, wow, he actually is. And I don't know. There was a part of me that wanted him to teach them youngins a lesson sight fishing.
That Plus, and that I love because I'm old school, because I'm old. The other thing, it was the perfect sports story. Here all these guys using the front-facing sonar, having all the Tucker Smiths, Paul Marks, and everyone else in the top 10 on the final day committed to that, with the possible exception of Jacob Porosnik. Drew Cook says, I'm going to be Don Quixote. I am going to go all in on this thing, which is low percentage, which is a long shot, and I will play it out to the very end, to the point where I'm going to throw away one of my fish, get rid of one of my limits, and to facilitate catching that one giant that will win me the tournament. How can you ask for a better sports drama situation than that?
And the other thing is, look, man, it took some stones to throw that fish. Let's just say he had enough weight at the time, which was close.
Yeah,
he was in the realm,
not that far off.
When he threw it back, you can say, man, that's the dumbest thing I ever seen. When he threw it back, I'm like, that is the coolest thing ever, because he is totally all in. And there is a confident and really watching him sight fish. Okay. Watching him sight fish is beautiful. From the distance he knows to stay away from a bed, from the time that he gives a fish or doesn't give a fish. That's the biggest key in sight fishing.
Right.
Yeah, you saw Randy Howell do good. I know Paul Marks caught one big largemouth on day one.
Yeah.
Obviously a critical bass. Jacob Porosnik. But Drew Cook is at another stratosphere when this is going on.
And beyond that, he did such a great job of walking. He did not have any filters on. He told us exactly what he was thinking about, what he was trying to do, as much with the male as with the female, and how to work that dynamic to finally get a fish to bite. It was a great education, in my opinion.
Unbelievable. And I'll tell you, when I was listening to Drew Cook, it reminded me eerily similar of Jason Christie. He will tell you when he is in contention to win a tournament, he will tell you everything he's doing, how he's doing it, to the flake that is in his bait. And there is a presence and a feeling that comes out of a Jason Christie, that comes out of a Drew Cook. Hey, man, if you can do it better, show me. And that's what Drew Cook is to sight fishing.
Interesting you should bring it up, because Jason Christie, and I was thinking about watching Drew Cook, he was the other Don Quixote story from a few years back at the Sabine, where we're headed, where he was the one guy took a low percentage approach to win the thing, totally all in. And in that case, well, he actually won the tournament. We love stories like that. And people tell me, they say, oh, well, I get as much out of watching people sight fish without using their eyes, with the front facing, as I do from watching a guy, using his eyes. Maybe so. Maybe, that little white blob of returns on a screen is just as entertaining. And I can understand that, but I think in this case, Drew Cook was very compelling. And to be able to stay with him 4 days, that's unusual too. We were on him each of the 4 days.
Yeah, and it was one of those, and granted, it was a different style of sight fishing with Kyle Welcher a couple weeks ago, but Drew Cook and Kyle Welcher, they were kind of finding them on the fly. The bad thing with Drew Cook in this tournament, and you and Tommy, we have covered so many of these tournaments together, that we always say somewhere, especially if you're on the tail end, possibly the tail end of a spawn, there's going to be that collision that a Paul Marks and a Tucker Smith were gambling on themselves. And Drew Cook hit that wall going, into the final moment. But again, I'm happy for Paul Marks. I'm happy for Tucker Smith. Dang it, dude, I wanted to see Drew Cook win that tournament.
I have to admit, too, we were, how could you not? I think a lot of our audience, it was just an exceptional set of circumstances, and he did such a great job, and so much emotion he threw into it as well.
With that said, the other thing in News Note the Nugget was, man, hats off to Lake Hartwell. I spent a lot of time taping Zona shows there. The beautiful thing about Lake Hartwell and this tournament, but the lake itself kind of offers something to everybody, your style of fishing. And the other thing, obviously, I was hearing Such is the stats guy. I think everybody ended up catching a limit throughout the entire event.
Everyone.
But what's cool about that lake is I purposely went there. It's one of those rare lakes, Tommy. As many tournaments as we've covered on Hartwell together, and we've covered brutal weather events.
Oh, no doubt.
I have fished there. I've taped there. I've taped Zona shows there in horrifically bad weather. They bite every single day on Lake Hartwell. Yeah. Every single day, those fish are biting. And I've made this comment on Zona shows. Like, if you're ever, it's one of those lakes that it's almost like cold fronts piss the fish off to bite more. When a lot of lakes that we've covered, you'll see cold front devastate them and it'll knock them back a day or two. There is something about Lake Hartwell. It's eerily similar to Table Rock. It's just loaded with fish that are constantly biting. And we got to see that definitely this week.
Yeah, we look at that number down there. 2,221 bass were recorded per bass track during the course. And that's not the full number, because we had several people off of Bass Track all this. More, it's closer to 2,500 bass were caught in that tournament.
Wow.
And everyone caught a limit. And the average size, you would think would be small for the winter. It was up well above 3 and close to 2.5, maybe a little under 2.5 for the field at large. It's just phenomenal. How can this, and better than it's ever been.
Look at all the catches. I mean, honestly, you know what that says right there? Just taking a look at that. I don't usually look at the footage while we're talking and just rambling. Dude, the entire lake is good, right? like for the majority of lakes we go to, there's a region, lower end, mid lake, or up the river system and stuff like that. The entire Lake Hartwell played for, and the other thing about Lake Hartwell, dude, it's a monster. It is absolutely enormous and can swallow a 100-boat field. And obviously, with the way that the spotted bass have grown in this lake, it is a forward-facing sonar. If you wanna use the front looker, this is the place to do that.
Yeah, it's just like linear.
You're going to catch a lot of bass.
Absolutely,
yes.
and everybody with 15 rods on their deck who actually used about 12 of them too. Lots of different approaches, lots of different ways to catch them, and these guys were being tested, and they rose to the occasion and found ways to catch fish which delights us every time. We don't want to see one rod up there.
And the other thing about Hartwell, is it's one of those goofy lakes that you could be, and I've run into this out there, you could be catching spotted bass, and I'm good ones, and then dunk, you catch a 5 to 6 pound largemouth actually mixed in where they live together at certain times of the year. That doesn't happen on a lot of other lakes throughout our country. It's very unique. It's definitely changed over, since I think the first classic that we covered there many years ago. It's changed so much in the past decade with the size of the spotted bass. But what's neat about it is, again, it's a pick your poison deal of how you. Basically, however you want to go bass fishing, you can do on that lake.
Yeah, and while we're still on the numbers, one thing you've already drawn attention to this. We look at Paul Marks' total effort there, and a lot of us forget that on day number 1, he fished 2 feet of water and caught a 5-pounder. You could say that was the difference right there. That was a difference maker. And
he actually talked about that. I know Mercer talked about it throughout the week, but talking to Paul Marks after the tournament, he's like, "Look, man, I just knew with what I knew on this lake that I could be in that 15 to 19 every day." And however the chips, but it was definitely catch as many as I can and just constantly jabbing away at Drew Cook, and that was the knockout punch.
It was that was the big difference maker right there. And other anglers watching him do talking about guys throwing everything but the kitchens. Randy Howell was fun to watch. I mean, he was going out digging around behind boat docks and just trying everything, every trick he knows to get doing it. And Randy Howell, pretty entertaining, you got to say, throughout the course of that.
But you kind of knew after. Yeah, after day 3, I texted Cook and I was like, dude, finish it. And he's like, I got my hands full, man. I know I got my hands full. Even though he had a good, I think it would to over 2-pound lead on that lake, so big lead. You kind of knew he still was going to have his hands full with. I hate to call it the kids, but he was going to have his hands full with the kids.
No, the fishing gods don't allow people to run away with 2.5 pounds anymore. One other thing I will say, another thing that worked in Paul Marks' favor. We talk about the Phoenix boats, big bass each and every day, the big bass caught every day. Day number 1 is Randy Howell with that, total unicorn 8-pounder, almost 8-pounder there. But then again, it was like a 6-something, 6.5, high 5 or something. On the final day, the big bass was not a 5-pounder, was not even a 4-pounder. The big bass was 3-something by Easton Fothergill. That sort of played into Paul Marks' hands as well, I would say.
Yes.
Not to take anything away from him. Yeah.
As much as what's funny is, as much as I say that you kind of knew that Drew Cook was going to have his hands full, every time you guys would go to him, every time you'd go to him, I would sit there and watch the footage. I'm like, oh, he's gonna do it. He's gonna find a 4 and then a 5. That's just Drew Cook's style, and it never transpired. And it's funny. He texted me yesterday morning. He's like, sorry, Z, and I said, it's what it is. I told him that was a great. All-around great tournament because of the diversity that we got out of it.
All right. Well, let's move on. We always, at this point in the show, we get into your top flight, your top 4 anglers at this point in time in the sport, and let her rip, Z.
Patrick Walters, Tommy, is no longer on my list this week. He is replaced by a destination. 4. I'm going with Green Pond Landing. I know, as crazy as that sounds, to look at the footage of the way in there, but all the classics that we've covered, all the tournaments that we've covered on Lake Hartwell. If you've not been to that boat ramp, if you've not been to that facility, it is one of the only places in this entire country where you feel welcomed as a bass fisherman. You feel that they welcome fishing tournaments to Lake Hartwell. I mean, Lake Hartwell is a tournament lake. And to see that venue, to see Green Pond Landing, again, so many memories. But what they've done there, what Anderson County has done in Neil Paul for just professional tournament bass fishing, man, you wish that there were other states that look at that and go, we're going to copy that, because it makes any fishermen feel happy to be there.
Yeah, absolutely. You combine that with the amount of fish that are catchable there, and it's just there's no place that can even compare. And it's a lot. When we arrived there for the first time, you and I, to cover the 2009 Classic, the lake was 9 feet down. It was freezing cold out there. People fishing timber. Timber won the Classic, and it's just such a different scene this time around. Everything was beautiful, and it was just a set of perfect circumstances for a fishing tournament. Okay, that's pick number 4.
Number 3, quietly moving up, especially we're headed to Texas next. 8th place in AOY right now, Trey McKinney. Trey McKinney just hangs around, Tommy. The dude just hangs around. We've talked about this, his near victory for Angler of the Year last year, his near victory for the Classic this year, and already in position for another Angler of the Year run. I mean, what can Trey McKinney not do, in all honesty? We knew, obviously, that he was gonna be pretty powerful on the Elite Series. To me, he has exceeded expectations. It's almost like, I mean, look at it like this. What place was he in after the St. John's this year? Like, wasn't he like,
oh gosh,
90th?
Yeah,
I don't know. He was down in the bottom.
There. 80s,
terrible.
I think it was 80s, probably.
Terrible.
Yeah.
To already be all the way up into 8th place of Angler of the Year, dude is a powerhouse. Number 2, and this is where things get a little bit dicey. Right. Carissa Johnston, Corey and Chris Johnston, right now, respectively. Look, Chris is not doing bad. 7th in Angler of the Year. Corey kind of weighing the team down a little bit. 27th place in Angler of the Year. And I heard you guys talk about during Bassmaster Live, I heard you guys talk about, man, this is a tournament. How are we not covering one if not both of the Johnstons?
Oh, sure.
There was forward-facing sonar, there was sight fishing, there was cruising fish. That seemed like a tournament that one, if not both, should have been in the top 10. Number one, and I called this angler 40 minutes ago, Jay Shakurat, number one, first flight. And here's what I learned about Jay Shakurat 40 minutes ago. I've known Jay, I've taped with Jay, I've spent a lot of time with Jay, but here's what I didn't know, Tommy. Jay Shakurat just woke up 40 minutes ago, and if you think that he's tired when he's actually awake like he is in that footage right there, you ought to talk to a tired Jay Shakurat.
I can't imagine what that, it kind of probably sounds a little like this, huh? Something like that.
No, and I'm
he's
big
even
in
more Jay Shakurat.
Tommy, you know I'm big in awkward pauses. There was a lot of awkward pauses with our new number one. He asked me, he said, 2 questions. What do I win? And where does my career go from here that I'm on this podcast for number one, Jay Shakurat.
Okay.
There you go. Good stuff.
Your top 4. That's Green Pond Landing, Trey McKinney, Carissa, and Jay Shakurat. I always throw in a couple of alternative choices at this point in the show. And I'm gonna say the name of someone, Shane LaHue. Who seems to be just getting better and better and having his best year, I think, so far. He's number 4 in the Angler of the Year standing. Shane LaHue has shown us some great stuff. Started out with a good river fishing tournament down at the St. Johns River. Show us a little bit about catching fish in the spawn, or adjacent to the spawn anyway, with the forward-facing sonar. We learned a lot about that. He's just a guy that improves, and he's got a great potential at Lake Fork coming up here. He performs very well at Lake Fork. He does very well. Where else are we going? Up north. He's good on St. Clair. He's got a great record at St. Clair. And who could pick? I don't know. I don't know who you pick for the Sabine. That's always a head scratcher. So we'll see how he does there. I don't think he's done that well, but he's got good potential this year, and I think this is going to be his best year ever.
You kind of been waiting for this from Shane LaHue. I mean, Shane LaHue is a veteran at this now, from fishing FLW to come to the Elite Series, starting to see what I think we both expected from Shane LaHue.
Yeah, absolutely. He's like one of the Johnstons. He got the same arc as the Johnstons, as far as when they joined and how experienced they were. Drew Cook is my other one. I mean, I got to give it to Drew. And we've already been, for all the reasons, because he does something that maybe people see as retrograde or old-timey, but he does it so well. And this, when we talk about he's the best in the business of this, we're talking about a full field, a full universe of people who are all aces at that kind of fishing. But for him to be that far ahead of him is just outstanding. Of course, I got to mention Easton Fothergill as well. I'll throw him in as a footnote. He was down at the very bottom of the standings after Florida won the Classic, and now he's erased half of that deficit already. Wow. He finally, I think he just sort of took a nap down there in the sunshine. Coming down from Minnesota, people do that.
His exact words, Tommy, you were sitting right next to him at the Classic, and he said this. He said, that Florida swing, man, I got pissed when it was done. That was the exact word he used. Yeah. And he seemed like, even though he said he was pissed, he seemed like still a very, very happy, nice man. If that's what it takes to get Easton Fothergill going, boy, don't upset him.
Yeah, and he's like Trey McKinney. You say, well, how does the rest of the season look for him? They all look great for him. You can't count him out of winning any of them, just like Trey McKinney. He's right there in that same basket. Okay, well, that's the first flight wrapped up. It's time. Oh, is it time to do Strike King? Let's do some Strike King again. We rolled out something new and exciting last time.
Tommy, I taped in Iowa a couple of weeks ago, and all I did, this is no joke, I started on boat docks, and I fished boat docks the entire time. This little beauty right here, this is called a Lose Pro SP. So what does that mean? What does that mean? What is the deal with a Lose Pro SP? If you look at that spool right there, okay, if you're one of those people that are out there right now, you're like, I want to be better at fishing boat docks. Tommy, you've told me that for years.
Have I not? Yes, of course. I can't skip to save my life.
I want to be better at fishing boat docks. The beauty of a Pro SB reel, that spool is very, very shallow. You see that gold spool. So if you put 20-pound line on that and a structure jig and you slide it under a dock, and it's a little bit of an ugly cast, Tommy, you're not picking out 300 yards of line. You're only picking out about 50 yards of line to where it just makes you better at skipping boat docks. In fact, Tommy, what I want everybody to do right now is if you run over to Mark Zona's Fishing's Instagram or Facebook, all you need to do is print. You ready? Send me that Pro SP Lil Boy, Lilboy. Send me that Pro SP Lil Boy. There you go.
I got it.
Honestly, if you want to be better at boat docks, that is the reel you want to use, bud.
All right, good stuff right now. I know you would like to, we didn't have it on the list today, but you would like to go over our Dakota Lithium Rookie of the Year list right now, and I think we got a pretty good idea who's sitting on top of that mountain right now. Well, it's not Paul Marks. It is Tucker Smith, as a matter of fact.
Yes, and actually, the biggest thing that I wanted to do was definitely hit on, man, what went on Championship Sunday. Tucker Smith, Paul Marks, Emil Wagner, Easton Fothergill, all the kids were at the party on Championship Sunday, and you had a vibe that group of anglers that I just named really were waiting for that Lake Hartwell tournament. Very curious to see how that group of anglers that we're looking at right there perform on the Texas swing. But a hats off. The main thing I want to do is give a big hats off to the anglers that really excelled on Hartwell.
Absolutely, and it's hard to believe we've gone this many events without having a rookie win. We had Paul Mark. Last year we had an angler win the first one event removed from his rookie season, and it was won by a rookie at the second one down there in Texas. So that is your Dakota Lithium. Dakota Lithium Rookie of the Year standings. Well, okay, last flight. Now we're ready to get into the dismal science, as they say.
Yes, and if you've never watched the TnZ podcast, what Last Flight is a group of anglers that just don't belong where they're at in the standings. A few of them have been with us the last few weeks. One of them I consider a brother that just won $100,000 in a tournament 2 weeks ago. Greg Hackney. What is the deal with you, man? What is the deal? Like, when it was strange, because I heard that I was texting with Hackney. I said, man, go win another $100,000, this week. He said, well, that's kind of the plan. I'm not going to say that. And Lake Hartwell, even though we're looking at him dominate on the Sabine right there, Lake Hartwell sets up good for Greg Hackney. Cruising fish, shallow fish, and you got to see what Porosnik, you got to see what Randy Howell, and obviously what Drew Cook did. Where are you at, Greg Hackney? What is the deal? 88th place in Angler of the Year. Doesn't even look right in the standings. Number three, we need to start talking about this, especially where the Bassmaster Classic is next year.
Yep.
Jeff Kowsey. Jeff. And again, watching the footage of how the guys caught him in this tournament, you were supposed to see Gussie on the last day of the tournament on Lake Hartwell. The scary thing right now for Gussie is where he's at. Unless he makes an absolute incredible turnaround, he's going to be working on the Bassmaster live set with us next year at the Bassmaster Classic. 91st in Angler of the Year. Number two. This young man is a friend of the Zona show, Tommy, and I'm confused by this. 99th place in Angler of the Year. The ever so not currently Zaldangerous one, Chris Zaldane. 99th place. And I had to do it. Just so I don't get yelled at for putting Chris up here. I texted Trait Zaldane and said, Trait, just curious, have you tuned? I can't say the exact words that I use. I said, have you tuned him up? He said, we we've had a come to Jesus conversation, especially what we thought at the Bassmaster Classic a month ago, and what we still hold on to going to Lake Fork. It's so strange not seeing him with a mustache right there. He looks like he's 9. Let me put it this way. The Texas swing for Chris Zaldain, it's as big as a swing that you're going to see in the last few years for him. And what's confusing about Chris, dude, he's so good. He's one of the most versatile anglers on the Elite Series tournament. That is number 2, Tommy Sanders.
All right. Leaves only 1. Or number 2, 1. Does it? That could be 2 for 1.
Well, we've got a confusing tie right now for number 1. Matty Robertson, he has lived at number 1 basically all season long since the first podcast. Combining him, he is in 100th place in Angler of the Year. Into 102nd place, I think you might have brought him up the last podcast. Steve Kennedy, exactly. Look at that. Oh my gosh. Combining Steve Kennedy and Matt Robertson is not, that ain't cool, bro.
I just now realized what that, okay. That's scary.
That is not cool.
That is scary.
That is not cool. So there you go. There's my last flight. And again, those are just 5 names right there that make, in my opinion, make 0 sense on where they're sitting on the Elite Series right now.
That's what Last Flight is all about. That is for sure. I'll throw mine in, which I did not pay attention to. Sometimes I get a heads up as to who you're picking. I picked Steve Kennedy as well. He is last in the stats. Now, I pick him for purely selfish reasons because he brings the entertainment when we have him, and he's a great, great angler. He was the first. He was the first of the 120-pound Century Belt guys over at Clear Lake in California. He's got 3 legitimate wins. These are not opens. These are straight-up elite events. 3 wins on his card there at very tough lakes, and he's just a super talented guy, and there's just no explaining, I don't know, why he's where he is right now. Doesn't deserve to be there. We keep saying that, but that's what this list is about. So he was my guy. My other guy, Brandon Card. Brandon Card has been laboring out there for a long time. The first college angler to ever come out to the Bassmaster Elite Series. Hasn't won a tournament yet, but has made himself a big part of the conversation in so many tournaments through the years, up until the end of 2023. Now, he had some health problems before that slowed him down. He bravely fought through all that. We thought he was done and thought he would get back and kind of start getting his way, busting through barriers and stuff like that, but that has not happened yet. So I'm just, Brandon Carr, one of those names you think should be higher, but for some reason, not right up there. So that concludes the Last Flight. Yeah.
I would say there's a group of those anglers in Last Flight that are licking their chops for Texas.
Yeah.
And I bet there's a few of them that are like, oh boy, we're going to Texas.
So are we doing Strike King now? We're doing Here Comes the Weigh-In. Here Comes the Weigh-In. Okay, we already.
Let's do Here Comes the Weigh-In. Tommy.
Yes, please.
Let's do it. Let's jump in.
Yes. Here comes the weigh-in. Exactly.
Yes.
So we got a controversial subject here. We got one guaranteed in a dynamite way to stir up emotions.
So what's funny, obviously, we've lived in the world of either favorite people that love forward-facing sonar, and then there's people that totally hate forward-facing sonar. I'm in the world of worry about you and do what makes you happy, and don't worry about what that person right there is doing. Let him be happy. Yeah. So it was Friday night, and I was trenched into round number 2 of the NFL draft. And usually in a tournament like this, somebody will be over and I hate those front looker tournaments, man. I can't. The person that was over said, I just can't stand sight fishing events, because at the time Drew Cook was leading the tournament. And I said, oh, that's cool. I said, they only been around basically since the mid to early 80s. And he said, well, you do know that they're destroying all those lakes. Like they're destroying that lake that they're at right now. I said, can you even name the lake that they're at right now? And he said, no. And I said, I've been around tournaments my entire life. Basically, since Bonnie Zona had me, and I was 2 months old, I've been around fishing tournaments for a long time. if you look at the lakes right now to make that statement, okay, if you look at the lakes, let's talk about two lakes that really get pressured on bedding bass. Okay. Now, I'm not a biologist. Let's talk about Lake Gunnersville. Okay. Tommy, you know this, every single day in basically March and April, and now there's fish that are spawning out there, and that lake is as good now as it's been. Another lake right down the road from me is Lake Salt Clair. Okay. Lake St. Clair in Detroit. There's about 1,000 bass caught in our off beds throughout the entire spring, all the way into when our season opens. They get weighed in. St. Clair is as good as any lake in the entire country. So when I made those two examples, he said, well, those are exceptions. I said, actually, no, those aren't exceptions. I can keep going. But then I went even further. I really dove in and I said, well, do you just take off? Do you just take off the spring and not fish? He said, no. I said, you love throwing a wacky worm. He's like, oh, I love that. I said, you do know more than likely, even though you're not looking at them, you're probably catching 75% of them are spawning fish. And I could tell that he elevated and that he was starting to get mad. And I said, let me throw one more at you. I said, well, certainly you don't hunt during the rut. I said, oh, hold on. You've done that since I've known you for the past 40 years. And he goes, well, there's a difference. They can run away from me. I said, well, a bass can swim away.
That's the difference.
So that, I guess here's my point. Full circle on talking about, I respect anybody that says, hey, forward-facing sonar is not for me. I respect anybody that says, man, oh my gosh, I will not look at a bass on a bed. I respect when somebody does that. But to follow it up with, it's going to destroy our lakes. If you look at the weights on our lakes right now, some of them are higher than they've ever been, and they get throttled with sight fishing.
Sure.
It's pretty much always been around. And I would be the first one to say, wow, some of our lakes suck because of sight fishing. I, at least, covering this sport with you for the past 21 years, I don't see it in any way, shape, or form. Let me throw one more thing out there that was interesting. This has nothing to do with it hurting our lakes, affecting our lakes, helping our lakes. I asked Drew Cook, I said, with all the front lookers, with all the kids out there playing around with their depth finders, I said, do you see less pressure in these traditional sight fishing events, sight fishing lakes? This is interesting what he said, and I don't know what it tells us, but Drew knows. He said, dude, I see a lot less pressure. With that being said, those fish being chased around day after day after day after day, they come in, they do their business. For the majority of them, he said, they do their business and roll. And I said, Drew, is that a herring effect? Because a lot of the lakes that have blueback herring, if you look at a Lake Murray, if you look at Hartwell, the fish come in, they spawn for what seems like about 3.5 minutes and then get back offshore.
Back to the buffet.
Back to the buffet. He said, no, I believe that's happening on many, many lakes, not just blueback lakes, that their behavior on a bed is different than it used to be. He kind of went in. You got to hear Kyle Welcher talk about this. A lot of those bass on the Pasquotank were comfortable. They were comfortable. I don't think the fish get chased around on the Pasquotank a lot with forward-facing sonar. But that was really interesting that he made the comment, the spawning process that he observes with his eyeballs, he believes the way they're acting now is a direct effect from being run around with forward-facing sonar. Is there fact to it? I don't know, but I believe things that Drew says.
I agree with you. I have never seen any evidence that sight fishing affects fish numbers on a lake, but it does, and always has, affected one class of anglers in a very negative way, and that would be sort of an almost outdated concept called co-anglers. They are the biggest enemies of sight fishing that ever to come along in the sport, because they're sitting there in the back of the boat and sort of going like this and that, and nothing happens.
Yes. I fished on the front of the boat in a few sight fishing tournaments. You're right about that, and I think you can equally, and this is very random, but you could equally say the co-anglers feel the same way about forward-facing sonar sitting in the back of the boat. There you go.
There we go. All right, case closed right there. Hey, we got some more Strike King Yeti. What do we got here?
Last thing right here. This time of year, Strike King Hack Attack Swim Jig. Okay. I'm gonna take this little buddy out of the package, and what makes this beautiful, I can tell right here just by looking at it, that is a 3/8 ounce Strike King Hack Attack jig. But the beauty, Tommy, in the Strike King Hack Attack jig is that hook right there. You see that hook? Mm-hmm. The great thing about that Hack Attack jig, you can fish it with braid, 30, 40, 50-pound braid, old school style swim jigging, or if you want to do a little bit more finesse style swim jigging with a fluorocarbon. The great thing is that hook will sustain striking. That is this time of year. So one of you you're not only going to win that Hack Attack jig, I'm going to load you up with some Lew's and Strike King baits. Let's go. Strike King Hack Attack jig.
Yeah, let's go.
Swim
Absolutely,
jig.
Let's go. Before we go from the TnZ show, though, we got to do our traditional, there it is, the Olympic sort of theme there. We are going to the top of Mount Olympus to use our masterful prediction and prediction skills and so forth to pick the winner at the next stop for the Bassmaster Elite Series. Ladies and gentlemen, Lake Fork on the Sabine River system.
Tommy, I gotta go. I can't do anything profound. I feel good about my pick being Drew Cook this last week. I'm going pure chalk, bud. Lee Livesey scares me on the water. Lee Slightly has scared me off the water. Man, I want to pick Zaldane in this tournament because I know he's gonna gamble and risk it. Could be to a fault. I want to see Chris catch him in this tournament, but Lee Livesey right now is so close to being in my first flight the way he's been doing this year. I think there's a little bit of a momentum thing going right now with Lee Livesey. Again, any of the viewers are like, really? You pick Lee Livesey on Lake Fork? I fished there with that dude. That guy does not stop on places that house 3-pound bass. He doesn't do that. He doesn't stop on places that have 4-pound bass. He stops on places that have the capability. And what's funny is the tournaments that we've covered him, he's going to take him. He's going to talk. He's like, I'm going to go out tomorrow. I'm going to try to sack up 30 to 40. Dude, when he says that, he means that. Yeah. You know this. You hear other anglers. They're like, yeah, I'm going to go out and shoot, what is it? Swing for the fences or some BS like that. Yeah. When Lee Livesey says he's going to do that, he is either going to take the truck in the ditch or he is going to hold the trophy.
That's what we like. We like stories and performers like that. Absolutely. Well, my pick, I'm going chalk as well. Just almost as much chalk as Lee Livesey based on when this tournament is happening. And this tournament is happening much closer to that year of 2022 when Lee Livesey won it there. I'm picking the second place guy there. He's already won on this year of 2025 on the Bassmaster Elite Series. I'm saying Brandon Palaniuk is going to be my pick. I'm saying it's maybe a little different Brandon Palaniuk this time around in 2025. We shall see. He's won in big tournaments in East Texas before, and he's done very well on Lake Fork.
Definitely done well on Lake Fork. Always does big. Does great in big weight events. Let me throw you one name, and I believe he was on your first flight a week ago. Keith Combs.
Oh, yeah. That's absolutely. I'm picking him.
Come on, man.
Yeah. The dude's caught over 100 pounds in 3 days on Lake Forks. I mean, come on.
I know. I went there the day after with them. I totally know. Hey, let me give you a Keith Combs story. Okay. When he did that in 3 days there. He called me. He's like, hey, and Keith and I, we hunt together and goof around. This is a true story. When he caught that, he said, hey, dude, you want to come down and shoot a Zona show? I said, yeah. And I told you this story. It was Memorial Day weekend. Okay. Usually time to grill, time with the family and stuff like that. And I said, yeah, I'll tell you what. I said, I'll take and drive. This was a Friday. I said, I'll drive down. I said, I'll drive down there Tuesday. We'll crank up the taping machine Wednesday. And he goes, yeah, I'd get in your truck in the next 8 hours and be here. And okay. So I remember calling cameraman Wes Miller, Carrie Barrett, and we drove down over holiday weekend. So we went out Memorial Day Monday, Tommy, Memorial Day Monday. And I said, hey, let's just go snoop around. I said, leave the camera guys alone. I said, we'll get them going tomorrow morning. He goes, no, you're going to want a camera in the boat this evening. Okay. No joke. So we go out there. It's about 3:00 in the afternoon, run a couple spots. What now they're well-known spots. They were not well-known down there then. It was a little bit slow the first probably 45 minutes to an hour. And I'll never forget this visual. We caught 5 that weighed right at 40 pounds on camera that evening. And Tommy, there was 5 acres blowing up on gizzard shad that were all 5 to 12 pounders.
Wow.
Like, dude, when it happened, like looking back on that now, when it happened, I generally can't control my bodily functions. When that happened, I was like, I remember setting the hook on a 1 ounce swim bait, casted it out on 25-pound line, setting the hook, and I thought I hooked a tree until it went, Anyway, cool Keith Combs story right there.
That's a good
5 to 12 pounders.
Let's go.
Let's go.
Going to be a great week next week
at
Lake Fork. It'll be good. Well, I can't wait till we reconvene again with the TnZ show, Z, and go through all these fun things. We've had a great couple of weeks here. 2 great tournaments to look back at.
Yes.
And I think the same will be the case the next time we get together after Lake Fork. Same time, same place, right here.
100%. Big hats off to Paul Marks. Huge win, and I think there will be a lot of fireworks in the next week. Tommy, I love you.
I love you too, Z.